This podcast covers real-life true crime stories, which might be intense or unsettling for some listeners. We aim to present the facts the very best way that we can, but we are not reporters or law personnel, and most of our research is subject to public information that we have compiled into a timeline for you. We present the information we research with respect and sensitivity, and we also include our opinions and have discussions. Our opinions and discussions are not fact. Because of the graphic content, listener discretion is advised. Remember, these are real people and real events, so it is vital that we approach each story with empathy and understanding. The opinions expressed are those of the hosts, Trace and Chris, and do not reflect the views of any affiliated organizations or sponsors. All accused are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. We discuss suspects in here, but that does not take away their presumption of innocence. All of our sources are cited in the show notes and on our website, www.causeofcrimepodcast.com. Your name is Denise Huber. It's June 2nd of 1991. You're 23. It's a hot summer day in Cali, and today you're attending a Morrissey concert with your friends. After the concert, you decide to drive home alone. In the middle of the freeway, your tire goes flat. It's after midnight, around 2 a.m., and you pull over. And this is the last time anyone will see you alive. I'm Trace.
And I'm Chris.
And this is
Cause of Crime. Today, we will look into the case of the tragic murder of young Denise Huber.
I think that this is a time where we can introduce the banter that you were so insistent upon before we get into the case. So as you guys heard, it's about Denise Huber. We're going to get into all of that. But first, I just want to say thank you guys if you're listening to this. Thank you guys for tuning in. We are coming back full swing starting today, December the 6th. I think this is when it's going to be released. I have too much going on. I was wrong. It's December the 4th. Okay, anyways, December the 4th for weekly episodes for Cause of Crime, which is what we used to do. And I'm so excited for that. I will say this case may be a two-parter. Me and Chris were talking about it. I do have about 16 pages of research.
Oh, geez.
So almost 5,000 words.
Oh my gosh.
But this is one of those cases where you can't leave anything out. You guys need to know about how this guy was caught, the trial, and the fact that justice, even though he was sentenced, he hasn't really did the true sentence yet. So we're going to talk about all that, but it may be two parts. So if it's two parts, it's going to be worth it. We promise. But we also have an exciting announcement about Aberrant. Aberrant is going to be released, and that one is on the 6th, December the 6th. And we're going to have monthly episodes. So if you like the spooky kind of podcasts, or even if you don't, give it a chance, because it's going to be me and Chris again delivering that kind of content over there. So we're still going to do this weekly, that monthly, and if you can just send any love that way with any of our podcasts, we truly appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
Are you excited about being back into the podcasting thick of it?
I am. Bug Eyes is back.
Oh, God.
For more Bug Eye moments.
Oh, my God. I swear sometimes I'm like, I can just tell her eyes are like bugging out of her head, because if people are new, they're not going to know what you mean.
No, that's true.
So we should probably explain that. So there was an episode way back when where I could hear it in her voice. Like, I can't see her, obviously, but I could hear it in her voice where she was going, like, her eyes, you could tell in that moment, her eyes were like huge. So I was like, oh, Bug Eyes over here. And she's like, what?
Yep.
So that's the little nicknames, So she's back. If you're new here, we constantly make fun of each other. We're best friends. That's what we do. But we're also here to just talk. We banter a little bit, but we're mostly here to talk and raise awareness for these cases. Before we get into the case we're covering today, I don't know, Krista, if you've heard of this. So I'm from Connecticut, and there was a horrific shooting in Hartford. Did you hear about that, Chris?
I actually think I saw your post about
Okay.
that.
So yeah, I did post it on my socials because this guy, let me make sure he hasn't been caught yet because I haven't checked it today, but as of yesterday, he was not caught. Oh, he was caught. Yay. Okay.
Yay!
So, sorry. He was finally arrested by federal law enforcement, U.S. Marshals, on the Violent Fugitive Task Force. His name was Lance Morales. So, in Hartford, he shot um, into a car and he killed a 20-year-old mother and a 4-month-old baby.
Oh my god.
And he went on the run. And it was a dispute over a car. Another person was injured, but they were not killed. But think about that. It's just a baby. How could you live with yourself after you do something like that? I can't
Yeah,
even
no.
wrap my head around it. But he was on the run. This happened on Tuesday. He was just caught. It looks like it's probably yesterday. So we're recording this on Sunday, so it'd probably be Saturday. If I have my days right, which I should because I went to elementary school. But it's just crazy that he was on the run for so long. Like they brought in federal law enforcement. I'm just really glad he's caught. But I always try to post that stuff because and that's just me getting around to what this podcast is about. Yeah, we talk like because we're best friends and we banter and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, when we get into the case, we get into the case. We talk about the case, and that's the important thing. So,
Oh, there was speaking, I know you had that incident happen in Connecticut, but in Pennsylvania,
mhm.
there was a shooting that was actually near, like, close to me.
Oh Jesus.
Um, and somebody that I work with actually lived on the same exact road that it happened. So I don't know all the details about it, but what I do remember is that the guy that was killed, he was only like 21 years old, but he was like, um, it looked as though that he was like abused and then shot.
Jeez.
Yep. And I don't know, I'd have to look into it, but at the time, whenever I looked at it, they were still there was 2 people that were seen fleeing the scene. So, I don't know if they ever caught them yet or not. So, I think they did, but I'll have to double check on it, but I heard that and I was like, "This is insane." Like, you don't hear that stuff. Like, it's insane whenever you hear something like that, like, near you. You know what I mean?
Oh, 100%. Because you
It's
don't think it's
crazy.
gonna happen. We live in this mode or this thought process where we're saying, "This could never happen to me." Like, that's terrible, it happens to somebody else,
Mhm.
but this can never happen to me. But it can. And it's a scary world that we live in. I'm not gonna get too deep into that subject, but it's a very scary world that we live in, so just stay very aware of what's going on
Mhm. Yep.
around you. Don't trust anybody. I think that I say that almost every episode, but don't trust anyone because even though you think that you can trust them, you probably can't. You just never
Mhm.
know. Even if it's somebody that you are an acquaintance with and you don't really know, but you're like, oh, they can never do something like that. You don't know many people behind closed doors. It's the way it works. So, but we're going to go ahead, I think, and get into the case unless, Chris, you had something to say
Nope. I'm good.
because we have a lot of info to go through. It's probably going to be 2 parts. Maybe not. We'll see. Either way, we'll take care of you guys and we'll give you all the info. Denise Huber was born on November 22nd of 1967 in Newport Beach, Cali. Her parents were Dennis and Ione Huber. Hold on, let me look up that pronunciation. I forgot to do that. I get so weird that I'm not pronouncing things right. Like,
I mean, that's how I am in the same way.
okay. So it's Ione Huber. She had a brother named Jeff Huber. Denise grew up in various Cali cities because her father traveled for work a lot, so they had to move with him when he got a new job within the company. She attended grade school across the state. She completed her junior high and high school education at the Los Angeles Baptist High School, graduating in 1985. She then attended Richland College in Dallas, Texas, and Covenant College in Chattanooga, Tennessee. We know that she attended the University of California, where she pursued a degree in social sciences and graduated in 1990. This girl's smart.
Mhm.
During her time there, she was an active student with a part-time job, and she worked as a waitress. She lived with her parents but wanted to work to save money for her future life. So just keep that in mind. She lives with her parents saving money, which is what a lot of kids used to do and still do to this day.
Mhm.
Denise spent a lot of time with them. She loved to go to the beach and lunch with Ione, and they spent time cooking and just doing different dishes together. So she was equally as close with her mom and her dad. Every Friday, they would have breakfast together, and Denise was described as daddy's girl. Just a day or two before she went to the concert and disappeared, she left a note on his computer that said, quote, "Hi, Dad. I love you. Have a great day. Love, Denise," with a smiley face, end quote.
Mm.
Little love, notes that you send, with your kid or, anything. If you have a kid, then you put the little note in there saying, "Have a great day." Like, it's just a little nice thought, and that's what Denise used to do. Denise had a passion for music and enjoyed attending concerts. She also had a loving boyfriend named Stephen Horrocks. Denise was a tall 5'9", and she was a stunning brunette. When she entered a room, all eyes were on her. And if you look at pictures of her, I don't know if you've seen her, Chris, but you should look her up really quick.
Mm-mm.
Look at pictures of her. She's gorgeous. She's just so pretty. She was a natural beauty. But beyond her looks, because those fades, she was sweet, kind, and she was just a fun girl to be around. Did you look up a picture?
Yeah, she's really
Yeah, she's
pretty.
really pretty. On Sunday, June 2nd of 1991, Denise is 23 years old. She attended a Morrissey concert at the Los Angeles Forum with her friend Rob Calvert. They were both extremely excited because Denise, again, loved music. Even though Denise had to work the next day, she wanted to have a good time. She was originally supposed to go to the concert with her Steven.
Oh,
Hold on, let me get
Jesus.
through.
Get it
I know, I can't.
together.
Everyone has a Steven, right? She was originally supposed to go to the concert with her boyfriend, Stephen Horrocks. They had only been in a relationship a few months, but she had known him for years. They met at the spaghetti factory where Denise worked as a waitress and Stephen worked as a bartender. Stephen found out at last minute that he had to work that night, and he asked their friend Rob Calvert, if he would go with Denise because he didn't want her to go alone. Denise wore a black dress, heels, dark stockings, and a little jacket on top. They had a great time. The concert ended at around 11 p.m., and after they went to a nearby Long Island bar for drinks. Denise and Rob spent about an hour there before beginning the drive back to Newport Beach. Around 2 a.m. on June 3rd of 1991, Denise was last seen driving her blue 1984 Honda Civic southbound along the Corona Del Mar Freeway, which is, I believe, also known as State Route 73. Somewhere along the stretch of highway, Denise's car developed a flat tire. She pulled off to the shoulder just south of the Newport Beach exit. She was just a few minutes from home because remember, she lives in Newport Beach. She was just south of the exit. That's how close she was to home, minutes away. It was a well-lit area, and there were call boxes along the road and a gas station nearby, so she could have easily went there and called someone for help. But no call was ever made, and then it just looked like Denise disappeared. The next day, Denise's parents, finding their daughter's room empty, completely panicked because Denise had work that day, and it was very unlike her to miss a shift. And remember, she still lived with them. So she always came home. She was very reliable and dependable. She would not just miss a shift. So they
Yeah.
reportedly so they swiftly reported her missing, and they called her friends and they had not seen her.
Hate it here. I said I hate it
You hate
here.
it here? I hate it here too.
Yeah.
This just cements that all this terrible, terrible you can have your life completely on track, but if you run into the wrong person at just any time in your life and they just decide this is what's gonna happen, what can you
Mm,
do? You know, she was
yeah.
vulnerable, and we'll talk about why later and how this person got to her because it's crazy. The ending of this case is actually insane. When I heard it, I was like, "What? You're gonna lose your mind." So just buckle in,
Right.
and I guess for everyone listening to this, just buckle in because I'm gonna speed through this. I'm gonna give you all the information as quickly as I can, but we're gonna also talk about there's a lot of points in here. So I'm just kind of going over general information in the beginning about Denise because that's what we do. And then we're gonna cover every single part. So around 10 a.m. on June 3rd, 1991, the California Highway Patrol officers discovered a blue 1984 Honda Civic abandoned on the shoulder of the freeway right near that exit. The car was registered to Denise and it had a flat tire. So the officers tagged the car with a courtesy notice, marking it, basically saying, hey, this car can be towed. But they didn't immediately suspect the disappearance of the driver because at that point they hadn't connected Denise to the car to the missing persons report.
Gotcha.
They left the vehicle as it was found, locked with no signs of a struggle or forced entry. So the car had no signs of a struggle or forced entry. So likely Denise got out on her own free will. The Newport Beach police quickly connected the vehicle to Denise's missing person report, and then detectives began their investigation. The car was carefully examined, but little evidence was available. The car was intact, there was no signs of damage other than the flat tire. There were no personal belongings inside, and Denise's purse and keys were missing.
Mm.
So the police's first step was to speak with Rob Calvert, which was the person that escorted Denise to the Morrissey concert. Rob explained that he and Denise had left the concert around 11 p.m. and went to a bar nearby for about an hour before heading home. They both left the LA area around midnight in separate cars. So he drove home in his car, she drove home in hers. He said Denise was in good spirits and he didn't notice anything unusual about her leaving. So detectives actually found Rob cooperative and truthful, and he was quickly cleared of suspicion. And this is a quote, he was fully cooperative and seemed genuinely concerned, quote, end quote. And that's what one officer said about him in the investigation. So concerned for Denise's safety, her parents spoke publicly and actively assisted the police in publicizing her disappearance. So getting her face everywhere, saying she's missing, just appearing. They distributed flyers with her photo and information throughout Orange County. And in an emotional statement to the local news, her mom said, quote, Denise wouldn't just leave. She would have found a way to call us if she could, end quote. Again, Denise was reliable. She went to work. She didn't flake. She was one of those people you could count on. So if she wasn't showing up and she was gone, it was not of her own free will.
Yeah.
This reminds me a little bit, just the beginning of it, not the rest of it, as we're going to get into it. But how, like, when you cover Jennifer Kessie, how she disappeared, like with her car, It just
Mhm.
blows my mind that you think you're in the safety of your home and your car, like, and you're never truly safe.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And that's the world we live in. And that's why we do this podcast, is because if we can just impact one person to listen to this and either change their mindset or be more aware of what's going on, it could save somebody's life. You know what I mean?
Yep. 100%.
The Newport Beach Police Department issued statements urging anyone with information to come forward. Local television stations aired updates about Denise's case, and several Southern California newspapers picked up the story. Over the next several weeks, police received dozens of tips from the public. Many reported seeing a car matching Denise's on the shoulder of the freeway, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. So no one's seen her go anywhere. Police rechecked the area where Denise's car was found, searching the nearby brush and open areas on foot, but there was no sign of Denise or any items that could point to her location. And think about how frustrating that is, both for the family and for the police. Family, their daughter's just gone. The car was locked. She's just gone. There's no evidence really around the
Yep.
area. They don't have her purse or anything. And then for the police, how are they going to solve this crime without anything?
Yeah.
So, in the absence of physical evidence, investigators began to consider the possibility that Denise had been abducted after her car broke down, which is, you know, what had to have happened here.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what's had to have happened. Yeah.
A police spokesperson later said, quote, "We're looking at every scenario, but with so few leads, it's hard to make headway," end quote. Because what do you do with no evidence?
Yeah, you don't have anything. Like there's nothing like left behind. There's nothing. There's no witnesses. It was so late.
And here's the thing, you have to let the evidence speak for itself. But if you have no evidence, how do you let it speak? And that's what these
Yeah.
police were running
No,
into. Go ahead.
no, it was on the
Mhm.
freeway. So, I mean, was there any like cameras in
1991,
that area
no.
that they can check? Oh, yeah, because I know, like, I mean, I worked in trucking for like 7 years. So when I would have anybody say anything about weather, or if I'm trying to check weather
Mhm.
route, like the weather and different routes, I can pull up the cameras and I can see, like, because you can go online, like, whichever state that you're trying to look in, and they actually give you access so you can look at those cameras that they have to show like what the highway, the traffic, and everything kind of looks like. So I kind of did that all the time. So that's why I was just curious on that if it was,
I don't know when those cameras went into effect, but I do not think that they were a thing in 1991 when this happened,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. I mean, it makes sense with it being in
Right.
1991. It probably wasn't in effect
If
yet,
it
but
was,
it would have been great if they
exactly, this would have
were.
been solved very quickly, probably.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing though. It's not very like even if it was, there's places where it's kinda blocked out where
Okay.
you can't see where it's at, you know what I mean? Like, you can't look at every single, like you can't just see like, there's not a camera in every single part of, like, the highway. It's more just kinda sporadic, like, here's a camera here, here's a camera there,
Oh,
so
okay,
you're just
gotcha.
trying to get it as best as possible, like, to kinda see for the routes, like, that's what I used to use it for, was just for the routes for my drivers, so I could tell them, "Hey, well, this looks like it's backed up here, and the weather's not that great
Mhm.
here, so maybe go this way, you know?" But, I the cameras are sporadic, they're not, like, at every single point, so even if they were installed at that time, it might not even been in that
Gotcha.
area.
And see, that's why I love this, because you have that experience to draw on, and I don't have that. So, like, I don't know until you brought that up, I didn't even know, that they had cameras like that, which is great for us now. But there's still, like you
Mhm,
said, there's still places where you're still not safe because they don't pick up, like, the blocked areas, you know?
mhm, like, the areas where they're not at,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah, okay.
Law enforcement then conducted a more detailed search along the state route and surrounding neighborhoods. Officers used helicopters to scan open areas and parking lots near the freeway for any sign of Denise or her belongings. They checked hospitals and shelters just in case Denise had been injured or unable to contact family. Because I don't know if you've heard of this sometimes, but there are, unrelated to this case completely, because this is not what happened, but there are people that have like psychological breaks, or sorry, it's psychotic breaks. And then they just like forget who they are, and they just kind of wonder. It's actually crazy. There's been a couple of cases that that's happened. People have went missing, and it was that. But none of these efforts led to any breakthroughs. By the end of June of 1991, investigators had exhausted most immediate leads, and the case was starting to grow cold. Her family continued to search tirelessly, working with volunteers to distribute thousands of flyers. They held vigils, hoping to keep hope alive that Denise would be found. Okay. So this is a family that loved her so, so much and was not willing to give up on her. Yeah. After months of searching, law enforcement admitted they were running out of options. The lack of physical evidence was a major barrier to any progress. I mean, you have to, like I said, let the evidence lead. If you don't have evidence, where do you go?
Yeah.
In 1994, reflecting on the investigation, a detective stated, quote, "We felt like we were looking for answers in the dark. It was one of the toughest cases I'd worked on," end quote. So despite all the media attention, the case did stall and police classified it as cold. And of course, Denise's family and her friends continued to hold out hope, hoping there'd be new tips, still using their voices to raise awareness. But by the end of 1991, no new leads had surfaced. Then, and this is going to blow your mind. So I hope that you're ready for this.
Oh, great.
And this is where things get really, really, I'm going to speak about how she was found. And that is very graphic. And it's something that I just want to say, like, the jury that was on this case, I don't know how they looked at pictures of her body, and I don't know how they did it, because that would haunt me. But the way she was found is unlike any case that you've ever heard, Krista. So, then on July 13th of 1994, a shocking breakthrough changed everything. In Dewey, Arizona, nearly 300 miles from Newport Beach, so a state away, a woman named Elaine Canelia and a man named Jack Court, along with his 10-year-old grandson, noticed something unusual while visiting John Famalaro's home. So John, who worked as a house painter, had an old Ryder moving truck parked on his property. So John told them that he would sell them discount paint when he met them at a local market previously. So they showed up to buy the paint. So they're like, "Hey, you can give us discount paint. We're going to show up and buy it." They thought it was strange that the truck hadn't been moved for years, because it was one of those things that was noticeable and really curious about what it contained. But John's behavior itself was weird too. He wanted them gone as soon as they arrived, and he looked very uncomfortable that they were even there. But why did you invite them there to buy discount paint if you didn't want them there? And this is what gets him caught. Thank God, this is what gets him caught. Suspicious. So Elaine had something in her head. She was like, "There's something wrong with this. I feel like something's wrong." And always trust your gut. Always trust your gut, because her gut solved this case.
Yep, always trust your gut.
This is the breaking point in this case. So suspicious, Elaine reported the abandoned truck to a friend in the local police, who arrived that day to investigate. Law enforcement ran the truck's license plate number and learned it had been reported stolen about 6 months earlier. Stolen truck. Upon inspecting the truck, They saw an electric cord running from the house to the truck.
What?
Police originally thought that this was drug related, so they had narcotics out there. But when they opened the truck after obtaining the search warrant, they were shocked because as soon as they opened the truck and they got the search warrant, there was a padlocked freezer inside that truck.
What?
Okay. And when they got the bolt cutter and they opened the padlock and they opened the freezer, human decomposition of remains hit them. And so they had to call homicide.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So this is what Dennis Huber states about Elaine. He said, quote, Elaine saw the truck and she told us that she felt a spirit pulling her to that truck. She felt so compelled she wrote down the license plate number, end quote. That's what her dad said about Elaine reporting it.
Wow.
Again, this would be the breaking point that solved this cold case. And like I put in my notes here, if you think something is off, always report it to the police because we will calm ourselves and say, oh no, like I'm just overreacting. Don't. No. React. It doesn't hurt just to report it. You could end up having something like this. The freezer ended up being the resting place for Denise Huber. She was naked in a semi-fetal position. 3 bags.
Wow.
He kept her years and years later. 3 bags covered her body and her hands were handcuffed behind her back. Another 3 plastic bags were over her head. It looked like she had been gagged and her face was covered with duct tape from her eyelids down to her mouth. Her skull was shattered, and some of the bits of the
Oh my
bag were
God.
inside the skull.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. It's disgusting. I just want you guys to know what a monster this man is. John Famalaro is a monster. In 2 boxes labeled Christmas, John had saved a nail puller, a purse, and a hammer stained with blood, a credit card, and a driver's license. And this was in a box that he labeled Christmas.
Jesus Christ.
And you have any guesses to who the credit card and the license belonged to?
Denise?
Yes. Whose blood was on the hammer?
Denise?
Got it. A couple of police uniforms were also recovered from his residence, which he could have used to lure out Denise from her car. And think about it, it's 2 a.m., it's dark. You say, oh, there's a police officer here. I'm safe. He's going to help me.
God.
Monster.
Monster. 100% a monster.
9 days after Denise's disappearance, John bought the freezer unit and her body was stashed. Police identified her using dental records, officially confirming that the body was Denise's. Alongside her body, detectives found various items linking her and John and him to her murder. Denise had been restrained, and evidence indicated she had been held captive before her death.
Wow.
This is her cause of death, and it's horrific, so just brace yourself. The cause of death was multiple skull fractures caused by blunt force trauma, and it was determined that there was a minimum of 31 blows to her head caused by the nail puller being slammed into her skull.
Oh my God.
They tried to reassemble the broken parts of her skull, but some of her skull was beyond restoration. They also found that she had been sexually assaulted.
God.
And he left behind DNA that tied him directly to the crime.
Oh my God.
And in addition to Denise's items that they found in the Christmas box, they also found a handgun and tools that authorities believe were used in her abduction.
Wow. God.
He kept her for years. He moved from California to Arizona and transported her body.
I just I I just don't understand. Like,
Police even go on record and they say if he would have dumped her body in the desert, we likely would not have. But when he froze her, he preserved evidence.
like, uh, uh, I don't even know what to say. Like, it just doesn't make it. I just, God, this is
Yes,
crazy.
yeah, it's insane, absolutely insane.
I don't know. I guess I'll never understand why people do things like this. This is
Mhm.
just, it's terrible. Like, I just, I'll never understand. And that's like the most frustrating thing is to not understand what makes people do these terrible things. Like,
There's just
you know,
something that I think it's good that we don't understand, because if we did understand, then we would need to seek help ourselves. But
yeah. Like
if you're
if you're
having
really
violent
like
thoughts, go somewhere, get some help. Like, you know that that's
exactly.
not a right thing to do. You know the difference between right and wrong, and you can't tell me you don't. Like sociopaths just don't care. Like, they don't feel. So, like, they it's just crazy.
Yeah, it
It
just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, like you said, it's good that we don't think like that, but I don't know. If you ever have thoughts of that nature, you should just already be seeking out help. I
and just
can't.
so we're aware, sociopaths do feel, but they just don't have empathy towards others. So, I don't know. And it's never been stated that he was one. How can you not feel when you're hurting somebody? How can you not feel guilt? I I do something wrong at work, or if I do something wrong in my life, I feel guilty, and it can be minimal. I'll be like, "Oh, I forgot to check the mail today," and I feel bad about it.
Yeah.
Like, or
I
I
mean,
forgot to do
I'm the
this, I
same
forgot
way.
about it. I'm like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I forgot." Like, and how can
I'm the
someone
same way. Like,
yeah. How can someone take someone else's life and just continue living and keep them in a freezer like a trophy, or hoard her? Like, he's hoarding her at that point.
mhm.
But following the discovery of Denise's body, police arrested him. He was 34. He lived alone in Dewey, Arizona, and had no previous criminal record. Crazy.
Jesus.
Just because somebody does not have a criminal record, it does not mean they are not a criminal. I'm just going to say that. Who knows if he did anything else that he just got by with. Investigators discovered that he had previously lived in Laguna Hills, Cali, near Newport Beach around the time of Denise's disappearance in 1991. This connection placed him in Southern California during the period when Denise was missing. So I'm going to go over a little bit of information about John Famalaro. So he moved to Arizona so that he could be close to his sister and her children. He stated that he loved them and treated them to great gifts and fun days out. John did not have a fun childhood. I'm sorry. I have I'm going to interrupt. I have no mercy for John. I'm reading this just because I'm giving you some background on him, but I don't believe a word this man says or really care, because he murdered Denise. End of story. But
Yeah.
so he was the youngest of three children, had an older sister called Marian and an older brother called Warren. His parents, Anne and Angelo, were completely different people. Angelo was kind and caring, but Anne was domineering and controlling and used religion to try to keep them under control. He would warn them if they misbehaved that he would go to hell. The children were not allowed to date or even spend time with their friends. So you can feel bad for a second for the kid, right? You can feel bad for a second for the kid growing up with a parent like that. But I do not feel bad when someone takes the life. You have control over the decisions that you make. There are people
Yep.
that grow up with really bad childhoods and, rise above it and do something with their life, and they don't hurt anybody else. You were you were
Yep.
you were choosing to make these bad decisions, and I will stand on that.
Yep. I 100% agree with that. You have the choice, like, you don't if you grow up in a bad if you grow up in a bad family, you have the choice when you get older on what to do with your
Yes,
life.
absolutely, 100%.
No matter how bad your life was growing up, you have the choice to turn your life around and make it everything that you want
And
it to be.
the reason I'm letting you know this is because they use this later in trial. The defense uses this later in trial. His mom being so strict and being so ugh. That's the only way I know how to say is ugh. So his mom insisted on washing them, paying particular interest to what they described as their special areas. Um, as they got older, she got more controlling and would follow them if they went out. And so John said this had an impact on him, and he became very involved in rituals. He said if someone touched him on his left side, he had to touch his right side so things would be even. His head and
What?
I don't know.
Uh,
His head
Go
his
ahead.
head and neck twitched constantly. But the thing about this man is there people around him described him as well-mannered, fun, and intelligent, but a little secretive. But John also had a past history with ex-girlfriends that showcased how violent he could be. He scared them and ruined every relationship he ever had. His brother Warren was also arrested and convicted for molesting a child. Both of these men are monsters.
God.
Do not feel bad for these men.
Oh god.
Feel bad
Mm.
for their victims. A
Mhm.
woman even reported that previously John took her to the desert to strangle her. She overpowered him and got away, thank goodness. Another stated that John left her handcuffed to a metal bar naked with the windows and doors opened.
Oof, I'm sorry. These women reported
Not
this,
necessarily.
right?
I think they came out. I didn't have that in my source material, but I believe they came out after he had been arrested and stated this.
S
Like they always had a weird
uh,
feeling about him, and he burned every bridge with the any woman that he was involved with.
I mean, any of this any
So here's the thing, he was a very smooth talker. So if you have ever heard of like Ted Bundy, I don't know if you have heard of Ted Bundy,
mhm,
but Ted Bundy was very
yep,
charismatic. He was a very smooth talker. He could get you in his car, no problem. Um,
yeah.
he was very similar to that in the beginning, and then he would let his weird side out.
Shocks me that from the women talking coming up about this, and this is all coming up in the trial now, but if these are brought to the police's attention beforehand, wouldn't he have already been arrested? And then this stuff wouldn't have even
So,
happened?
okay, so if we talk about him like chaining somebody, that can be, I'm not trying to, defense advocate, devil's advocate.
Yeah,
If he's there, they were in a
yeah.
hotel room. Obviously, they were, they were getting down, or something of that nature. They were meeting up to
Yeah.
do something or whatever. He said, she said at that point, unless an assault had occurred, and we don't know that that had happened. So you got to kind of think of that realm of things. They're coming out after because they can say, hey, this is a bad guy because this is what happened to me. And like he was escalating. So the woman that he took to the desert, um she may have been scared. You got to think about that, how scared she may have
Yeah,
been to, if she did know exactly who he
to
was,
come forward with
um
anything.
because I don't have a lot of information on that, but if she knew exactly who he was and he took her there, because she was like, he had her naked at the time and she ran away after she overpowered him. If
Mm,
she knew who he was and she's like, it's this guy, if charges were brought and he did get out, she probably would have feared for her life. So she's probably like, okay, well, I got away and I'm
yeah,
just never going to talk to him again. And if anything comes up, like I'll just, do what I did here and, come forward. But as far as she did, I
yeah,
don't know if she made a police report, so I don't have specifics on that. But either way, this is giving
mm,
you how violent and how apparent the evil and monster in him showed leading up to
okay.
Denise's death.
Okay.
So, according to court records, investigators found several incriminating items in his Arizona property. So, we all know the stuff that I've went over so far, but in one of his storage rooms, police found zip ties, duct tape, and handcuffs, all of which appeared to be associated with his abduction of Denise. And they also found Denise handcuffed in the freezer. And a bunch of his ex-girlfriends say once he got them in cuffs, that's when things got weird. Which, if that's your thing, like, that's fine. If you're two consenting or however many consenting adults and you want to handcuff each other and do whatever, go for it. But, and I'm not shaming anybody, but, obviously, that is not what he did. It wasn't about someone consenting. It was about him having control and him just being a fucking monster.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the police worked with Newport Beach law enforcement to reconstruct the crime. And one officer later commented on the case saying, quote, "This was one of the most horrific scenes we've ever investigated. The evidence left no doubt about what happened," end quote. So they ended up taking the whole freezer from John's home to the crime lab to be investigated and get all the evidence. Um, we all know that Denise's personal belongings tied him directly to the crime. And based on the timeline and evidence, they believe that Denise's car broke down on the freeway and that he had likely stopped to offer assistance and then abducted her when she was alone and vulnerable. The Huber family was obviously devastated that they learned Denise had died, but they got some sense of closure about what happened to her, at least they knew, what happened. So, and
Yeah.
this is a quote from them: "At least we know what happened to Denise. This gives us a small measure of closure, but nothing will bring her back." So, I'm going to go back to the arrest. John Famalaro was taken into custody by the police. Law enforcement officials from Newport Beach traveled to Arizona to assist in the investigation and ensure that he would be extradited to California to face charges for Denise's murder. At the time of his arrest, again, he was 34, and he appeared calm and uncooperative with police. He's like, "Yeah, I didn't do anything. Yeah, whatever." He was calm. He never raised his voice. He refused to discuss any involvement in Denise's disappearance or provide any details about his life in Cali. As police searched his home and property, they found additional evidence directly linking him to Denise, which I've already gone over a couple times, but I'm just going to repeat it all so we know what evidence is where. So the handcuffs and restraint devices that he likely used, zip ties, duct tape, and plastic sheeting, all that could be used in Denise's abduction and captivity, and the bloodstain hammer and nail puller. The nail puller is what they think was the primary, weapon used to kill her. Each of these items was carefully collected, documented, and preserved for forensic testing. Authorities discovered items with traces of human hair and blood, which later matched Denise through forensic analysis. Because you got to think about it. If he would have dumped her in the desert and she was decomposed, evidence, upon decomposition, a lot of evidence disappears. But he didn't
Mhm.
do that. He froze her. And he kept everything. He didn't get rid of the murder weapons. He didn't get rid of handcuffs. He didn't get rid of anything.
Well, he was thinking he was never gonna get
Exactly.
caught.
That one phone call from Elaine saying, "Hey, please check this out. This is the license plate number. I think there's something going on here." Because
Mhm.
he didn't have a criminal record. He wasn't in the system.
Nope.
It's crazy.
So, it would have never been found.
Crazy. So, following his arrest, he was transported to the local police station for questioning. Detectives from both the Prescott Valley Police and the Newport Beach Police Departments were present. John, however, maintained his silence throughout the interrogation and refused to answer questions about Denise or any details about how her body ended up in the freezer. The audacity of this man, of this monster. And then one detective later said, quote, "He showed no remorse, no emotion. It was like he completely detached himself from what he had done," end quote. He just continued to withhold information, he wasn't talking at all. the investigators just focused on building a forensic case with evidence to hold up in trial. So they did like analysis of the blood stains and fingerprints on the tools. Basically they matched everything to Denise. Like everything was matched to Denise, creating a solid case against John. Within days of his arrest, Arizona officials approved his extradition to California. By July 19th of 1994, he was transferred to Orange County, Cali, where he was formally charged with kidnapping, sexual assault, and murder in the case of Denise Huber. With him in custody, detectives from Newport Beach and Orange County reviewed the case's timeline, aiming to present basically what happened in Denise's final hours, and I'm going to go over that. The prosecutor assigned to the case was determined to seek the maximum penalty, and the evidence was, like I said, overwhelming because he kept everything. And like I previously said, like forensic testing all linked the items to Denise and him to Denise's murder. The blood stains matched Denise, that he kept the murder weapons.
Yeah, he kept everything.
Investigators also recovered fibers from his car and clothing that were consistent with fibers from Denise's clothing and items found in the freezer. So, like when, unfortunately, he was likely assaulting her and putting her body in there. This physical connection was huge, in the theory that he had met Denise on the night of her disappearance, abducted her, and transported her to an unknown location before ultimately driving her body to Arizona after he had killed her. Police believe that when Denise's car blew a tire that night, she got out of the car to walk along the roadway to make a call for help. While she was doing that, they believe that John saw her, pulled up alongside her, and instead of helping her, he kidnapped her. Because remember, there was a gas station really close, so she was probably going to call for help.
Yeah.
They based that around the condition of Denise's shoes. Her shoes were found in one of John's boxes at his home, a box marked Christmas. The shoes had marks all over them, and the tip of one of the heels was missing. All of Denise's friends and family confirmed she would have never worn shoes that damaged. John then took Denise to the warehouse where he tied her hands behind her back. Denise's death was brutal. The handcuffs were so tight that there was no room to even put one finger through them.
My God.
He then wrapped duct tape around Denise's head from her mouth to her upper eyelids. John put plastic bags over Denise's head and sexually assaulted her. She was struck at least 31 times over the head with a nail puller and a claw hammer.
God.
It may have been more, as there have been many fractures over fractures, so major, basically overkill. Her skull was described as being basically shattered. There was blood tissue visible through some of the lacerations. And I went over this according to an article I found. It's on chillingcrimes.com. And it's going to be in our sources. But you need to hear what he did to her, because her death was violent, savage, and brutal. And that leaves no questions. And remember me speaking about the jury's seen a picture of her.
I couldn't even imagine.
You can't forget that.
Mm-mm.
And that ties directly into his conviction. The keys to his handcuffs were found in his desk drawer, and he had also kept articles about her disappearance and recorded an appeal that Denise's parents had made on TV, asking for any information in relation to Denise's disappearance. He kept all of these things, probably reliving the crime. He was enjoying it.
Mm-hmm.
Why would he do that? He's reveling in their pain, not knowing what happened to their daughter. Monster.
Mm-hmm.
So next I'm going to talk about the trial. I know we went through a lot. We're already an hour in. I'm going to have to edit this down. But we're already an hour in. But just stay with me because we're getting somewhere. Just trust me. John was charged with the first-degree murder of Denise Huber. 2 special circumstances were listed as a part of the charge, and they were that the murder was committed during the commission of a kidnapping, and the murder was committed while engaged in the commission of a crime of sodomy. After nearly 4 years of investigations, evidence gathering, and preparation, the trial of John Albert Famalaro for the murder of Denise Huber began on May 15th of 1997 in the Orange County Superior Court in Santa Ana, California. The trial was huge with media because remember, her parents for years and years fought to get her name out there to find her before they knew what happened to her.
Mm-hmm.
The case was presided over by Judge John J. Ryan. The prosecution was led by Deputy District Attorney Lou Rosenblum, a prosecutor in Orange County known for his focus on justice in high-profile cases. The defense was headed by attorney James Crawford, who attempted to cast doubt on the evidence and suggested that certain investigative practices might have led to contamination or misrepresentation of forensic results. You can't. Oh my god! If DNA is, I don't understand it because if DNA is if your testing's inconclusive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then it's inconclusive. But this directly tied him to it. So how are you saying that? In my head, are you saying that they tampered with it? Because contamination and tampering are two different things. Like contamination gives me like this was accidentally contaminated, but tampering is like saying, oh, like framing.
Yep.
Makes no sense.
No.
I understand that he had to have a defense, right?
Yeah.
But like that's just weird. So opening statements began with prosecutor Lou Rosenblum, who told jurors, quote, "You will see evidence that leaves no room for doubt. The brutality of this crime and the deliberate planning by Mr. Famalaro revealed the calculated nature of this murder," end quote. He laid out the case for premeditated murder, explaining that the evidence would show that John had abducted Denise, assaulted her, and ultimately killed her in a methodical manner. So on the opposite end, we have the defense. And he stated in his opening, quote, "In every investigation, there are points of uncertainty. We ask you to keep an open mind and consider whether every piece of evidence is as reliable as it seems," end quote. We've talked about a lot of the evidence that the prosecution had. I'm just going to go over it and some other things about it.
Okay.
The prosecution's case relied heavily on forensics because that's, to me, if I was on a jury, that's what I would pay more attention to is forensic evidence because it's proven. It's tested. It's like this is who matches this, and like it ties somebody to the crime, the fibers and all that. But first, the bloodstain tools. Forensics experts testified about the bloodstains found on the hammer and nail puller in his possession. Forensic analyst Dr. Ted Kirschner explained how DNA testing confirmed that the blood matched Denise Huber's DNA. So Kirschner described the process stating, quote, "We conduct multiple rounds of testing to confirm the identity of the blood, and every result pointed to the same source, Denise Huber," end quote. 2. Fiber and hair evidence. Crime scene investigators found fibers from John's clothing and vehicle that match fibers found on Denise's clothing. Additionally, human hair matching Denise's DNA profile was found on items in his truck and the freezer. Forensic examiner Alice Haney testified, quote, "The fibers recovered were consistent with those in his home and vehicle, suggesting prolonged contact," end quote. There were multiple things tying him to her, not just her being in a freezer in a stolen truck. Next, the freezer and the preservation of the body. Police photographs of the crime scene, including the freezer where Denise's body was found, which I'm going to put that on our website when we get that up and running. But it's very eerie to even see a picture of that freezer. They have a picture of the freezer on the outside, like you can see just the freezer. It's just scary. So anyways, these photos were shown to the jury. The prosecution argued that John's decision to store her body indicated premeditation and a disturbing level of planning. Detective Sergeant Tim Cook, one of the officers who had initially investigated the freezer, stated, quote, "It was clear that this was a calculated attempt to conceal the body long term," end quote. So there were a couple of witness testimonies that I want to go over. So first was Elaine, who reported the whole thing, basically made the break. Reported the truck to the police. She testified about her suspicions about the events that led to the truck search. She said, "I just knew something wasn't right. I felt I had to say something." And then Denise's parents. They provided heartbreaking testimony about Denise's disappearance and the impact on their family. Ione said, Denise was a loving daughter, and her loss has left an emptiness that will never be filled.
Mm-mm.
Okay, and then the defense. The defense focused on cross-examining the prosecution's forensic experts, questioning the chain of custody for evidence, and questioning the possibility of contamination. Crawford attempted to raise doubts about the reliability of some of the forensic methods, especially the DNA. However, the prosecution's experts were like, no, we have specific protocols we have to follow, and the analysis were accurate, and we did multiple analysis. Because they don't just do one and say, oh, here it is. Like, they do it, they test it multiple times.
Well, yeah. Yeah.
In one key moment, Attorney Crawford asked forensic analysis Dr. Kirshner if there was any chance that the bloodstains could belong to someone else. And Dr. Kirshner firmly replied, quote, no. The probability of a match to anyone other than Denise Huber is infinitely small. It's not going to happen. You're trying to prove something that isn't true.
Yeah.
You're trying to create reasonable doubt, but there's no doubt. Everything ties him to this.
Yeah.
After several weeks of testimony, both sides delivered their closing arguments in July of 1997. So prosecutor Lou Rosenblum reiterated the evidence, saying, quote, every piece of evidence points back to one person, John Famalaro. The brutality, the planning, and the details all lead to him as the sole perpetrator of this horrific crime. End quote. The defense closed by urging jurors to carefully consider the forensic evidence, arguing that reasonable doubt remains. Okay. Due to the lack of eyewitnesses. So they're saying, oh, you don't have any eyewitnesses, so there's reasonable doubt. You can't prove it. And this is a quote from the defense. Quote, no one witnessed these events, and without that, we must be cautious in assigning guilt beyond any doubt, end quote. From Attorney Crawford. Okay.
What?
After 5 days of deliberation, and I just want to put out here, death penalty is on the table. At this time, death penalty is on the table. It's still on the table, but we'll get into more technical things about that later. But after 5 days of deliberation, the jury returned with a guilty verdict on all charges, including first-degree murder, kidnapping, and sexual assault. Prosecutors sought the death penalty. The jury agreed.
Oh,
And and Judge John Ryan formally sentenced Famalaro to death. But this is going to piss you off.
oh, great.
To this date, he is still on death row at the San Quentin State Prison in California.
What?
And despite multiple appeals, he remains on death row with no execution date in sight. Because in 2019, Governor Gavin Newsom signed Executive Order N-09-19 that institutes something on the death penalty in California, halting any executions during his time in office. So as long as he is in office, there will be no executions.
What?
So even though he was tried and he's in prison, right? So he is in a way paying for it. He still is not paying for it in the way that the jury and the judge decided.
Wow.
And he never showed 1 ounce of remorse for what he did. Denise Huber was a beautiful young lady. She was beautiful. She was full of life. She had dreams and plans for her future. She was just 23 years old. She had her whole life ahead of her. And she was one of the most loved individuals. She was creative, caring, and she will always be remembered for her smile. She was a daughter, a friend, a girlfriend, and a vibrant spirit. Her family and friends remember her for the joy and kindness she brought to their lives. And Denise's dad said this in an interview, quote, Denise was a light in our lives. She was our only daughter, and she brought so much happiness into our family. We'll always miss her, but we'll never stop remembering her, end quote. And on Denise's headstone, it's written, quote, you will always be loved.
Hmm.
And that concludes the murder, the brutal, horrific, senseless murder of Denise Huber.
So sad.
It's horrific. It's absolutely horrific. And if you look up a picture of this man, monster of a man, you can tell the arrogance in his face when he's on trial. Look him up really quick.
Yeah, I know. I see him. Whenever I looked up her picture, I saw him too.
I mean, you can just see it.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me sick.
Mm-hmm.
He actually makes me sick.
Yep.
Oh my god, I just want to like punch him. I'm not a violent person, guys, I promise, but like people like that just make me, I just want to punch them. Thank you for listening to Cause of Crime. We put a lot of work into our episodes to bring you as much information as possible. Hours and hours of research, technically. We list all of our sources on our website, causeofcrimepodcast.com. If you, oh, that's you.
Yeah, I was about to speak. Come on. If you want to continue to support us, please check out our socials at Cause of Crime Pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Also, we do have Patreon for early access episodes on Mondays instead of Wednesdays, and there's some other small benefits on there. This directly helps our show, but it's never appreciated. Oh man, it's never expected, but always appreciated. Stay safe, trust no one.